Thank you, Rob, and thank you for inviting me to come and give this presentation. I'm delighted to be able to share in the celebrations of your 25 years, so congratulations to everybody involved at BC now and involved at BC over those 25 years. As Rob said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the bio-based economy, or the bioeconomy, give you a feel for some of the things that we're working on here at NNFCC, and some of the areas where the UK has really decided to place its focus and attention. So there might be one or two of you in the room that don't know about the NNFCC. We're a specialist consultancy and research and technology organisation based in York, and we work solely in the bioeconomy, whether that be fuels, energy, materials. That's our specialism. Okay, I guess I probably don't have to describe what the bioeconomy is to the audience in this room. You are probably, some of you, working in the bioeconomy 25 years ago, before the bioeconomy term was even coined. I did some checking last week to try and understand when that term was actually coined for the first time. And seemingly it's around 1989 when the concept of the green economy was first mooted, although the term wasn't actually used for another 15 plus years after that. But certainly from a European perspective, it's regarded as one of Europe's strategic policy areas. Europe has a limited access to resources, especially fossil carbon, so it sees the bioeconomy as one way of creating jobs, breaking our fuel security problems, using Europe's leading knowledge base to create high-value jobs and innovative processes, and at the same time dealing with some of the environmental challenges we have today. So it's certainly an important area on a European level, and I'll come later on to see how the UK looks at that. So what makes biomass so interesting, or potentially so complicated when you're a policymaker? Well, I think it can be summed up on this slide here. The interesting thing about biomass, it has its separate... This is not working. No, that's died. Three particular types of content that you can attribute to biomass. It has a functional content, as we all know, so it acts as food and it can act as materials. But it also has a carbon content, so we can make things with it. We can make chemicals, we can make plastics, we can use it as a liquid fuel, or we can make a gaseous fuel of it, which is storable. It also has, as everybody who watches anything in policy knows nowadays, it has an energy content. So again, as a fuel source and as a source of heat of power. Of course, it also is related to ecosystem services. So it's important for the health of the planet. Trying to cope with those four dynamics in terms of producing policy which allows the bio-based economy to move forward is incredibly challenging and leads to considerable debate about how that should be actually achieved. One area of debate is the idea of cascading use. So we should always take the value of biomass first and produce materials with it, or produce chemicals, plastics with it, and then only at its end of life it should then be used for heat or power applications, which is fine. But that also misses a couple of points around biorefinery operation, where we use the whole biomass to serve everything that a biorefinery needs. So that's not only the ability to make products, but provide its own heat and power on site. And also, it doesn't take into consideration stranded assets. There are places in the world where supply chains don't exist to move that biomass around. So the best use of that in that situation would be to use it for heat or power generation. So it's a complex area and needs a lot of thought. Looking at bio-based products and chemicals, looking at those higher value refined products, there is a tendency to forget in the debate with bioenergy and biofuels that there is considerable production around the world, and always has been considerable production. If we take out food starch, if we take out paper pulp, and we take out the biofuels sector, really 3 very large uses of biomass refined products, we're still left with around 60 million tonnes per year of refined bio-based products, whether they be food ingredients or ingredients into the chemical industry. So it's a significant area of the economy already. So we're not talking about the bioeconomy being anything new. It's always been here. There was bio-based chemicals before there was fossil-based chemicals. It's just more of a resurgence of the area. Why would people consider producing bio-based products? Why does it have any advantage over any other type of product? Well, I think it can be summed up in this equation. And there's 2 sides to what we need to think about. There's a cost and there's an advantage. So if we think about value, I always say to people, when you're looking at bio-based materials, bio-based products, or any product actually in general, think about value. It's not price that should be the driver in business decisions, it's value, and it's understanding where that value comes from. So the value is often related to functional benefits. So what can that material, what can that product actually deliver in terms of its function? But there's another important area as well, which is emotional benefit. I'm sure we've all bought clothes or items for the house that we knew you could get equal function from a cheaper product, but it made us feel better to buy that expensive Armani suit or that nice Ferrari that you all drive at BC. Of course, the flip side to that is monetary cost and psychic cost. So in business-to-business relationships, it's often a case of functional benefit versus monetary cost. On a brand owner perspective, or when we're dealing with consumers, it's emotional benefit and psychic cost which is important. So the idea that a bio-based product is more emotionally attractive. We like to buy green, we like to buy natural. The counter to that, of course, is psychic cost. We don't want to buy a product that might be seen as damaging to the environment. So brands need to be very careful about moving towards bio-based products. So what affects those items? Well, relative feedstock pricing certainly does. And there's no doubt with increasing oil price, bio-based products in terms of feedstock inputs have become more attractive. Lower cost production routes. The ability now to do things in the area of bioscience that we simply couldn't do 25 years ago or even 10 years ago makes processing cheaper. We've talked about consumer desire and enhanced product performance. So those 4 component parts make up the value of any bio-based products we want to consider. Of course, when we talk about that psychic cost, generally in the areas of bio-based products and biofuels, we're talking about land issues. We're talking about biodiversity, we're talking about social access rights to land where that we might be using to grow crops, to grow forests that we want to use for bio-based products. And so I just highlight this slide in just to point out another, I think, quite a significant change that's happened in the last 18 months and is really happening this year. Moving away from the use of starches and edible sugars to cellulosic sugars. And we now have actually 3 cellulosic ethanol plants, well 4 actually, 4 cellulosic ethanol plants, that's Spanish Inquisition, isn't it? No, 5 cellulosic ethanol plants already happening around the world, but there's 4 already commercially producing, and there'll be a 5th one in the next couple of months. So large-scale cellulosic ethanol that are not reliant primarily on food crops for their production. Okay, I don't expect you at the back to read this. This just really shows the complexity of processing options for the production of bio-based material, bio-based fuels. So the green box at the top are all the possible feedstock inputs. Down at the bottom are all the possible markets. And in the middle is all the different technologies and routes you could use to get there. And I'm going to come on to where the UK is really thinking about developing this area. The point I want to make here, there's a lot of products, a lot of chemicals that we think of as fuels, but they're not just fuels. Ethanol, is ethanol a fuel or is it a chemical intermediate? Is butanol a fuel or a chemical intermediate? Are furanic molecules fuels or chemical intermediates? Well, of course they're both. So very much from a UK point of view, we've taken the stance that we're not going to really think about the market. We're not going to worry about the feedstock too much. We're going to worry about the technology and the process in the middle. And I'll come back to that slightly on this slide. So how do you build your bio-based economy? Well, if you're in Brazil, you build it on your access to feedstock advantage. And you may do if you're in Scandinavia as well. You build it on your advantage for forestry. Or you could look at technology advantage. Do we have technologies that place us ahead in this race in the bioeconomy? Or market advantage. Do we have markets that are really strong in our region that we want to supply? In the UK, we don't really feel we have a feedstock advantage. Yes, we've got a good agricultural sector, we have some forestry, but we don't really have a feedstock advantage compared to Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, South America, Asia, for example. Market advantage, well, we're mixed. We don't have really commodity chemical production in the UK. We're not strong in terms of biofuels. We've got quite a good cosmetics and personal care sector. So that's very mixed and mumbled. But what we do have is a highly regarded research base. And that goes for the world over. We can compete on a research point of view with anywhere else in the world. And it is that area that we've really decided to place the UK's effort, not only in developing the bio-based economy, but developing its overall economy. Now, you may be familiar with this slide. This sums up really UK industrial strategy and our decision to really focus on what is regarded as 8 great technologies that will put us instead in terms of economic development in the next decades to come. So on there we have advanced materials, energy storage, big data, satellites, robotics, synthetic biology, regenerative medicine, and agri-science. And of course, if we think about the bio-based economy, certainly agri-science is going to be utterly crucial. So is synthetic biology. It's a bedrock of industrial biotechnology development. And also big data, how to understand biological systems and environmental systems. So there, the UK's 8 great technologies, which sums up our industrial renaissance or our industrial growth. So how are they actually going to do that on the ground? Well, this is the BBSRC's and EPSRC's strategy for how it's going to really develop its industrial biotechnology area. 2 strands to that: build the communities, provide the investment and the funding for research to take place, and formulate that research to allow it to move down technology readiness levels towards commercialisation all the way from transitional research. So we have these networks, which I know certain members from BC are already involved with, and those networks are there to really bring academics together with industrialists, identify big challenges, and then do initial scoping studies, really develop those ideas at an initial level with an idea to go on to larger funder ponds. So these provide little seedbeds of innovation that allow Horizon 2020 applications or allow for the industrial biotechnology catalyst applications. There is 13 of them, and they have £16 million worth of funding between them, so not insignificant. And there's several in the top right-hand oval as you're looking at it that deal in the area of biorefining, are very pertinent to BC. So food waste net, as the name suggests, focusing on the agri-food chain. LBNet, which is lignocellulosic biomass, really looking at deconstruction of lignocellulose, and plants to products, looking at integration of systems, integration of processes. And the other networks have cross-cutting themes that look at metals in biology, anaerobic digestion, or the growth of using algae as feedstocks to the bio-based economy. So I urge you to take a look at those networks. You can find them on the BBSSE website, and find the one that's pertinent to you and use it to build your network and make connections. So the IB Catalyst, I know some of you are very familiar with the IB Catalyst, but some might not. What the IB Catalyst have done is really brought together the primary funders in the industrial biotechnology space. So BBSRC, EPSRC and the Technology Strategy Board, now Innovate UK, have all put money into a joint pot, and to my knowledge that's the first time that's really happened, at least in the bio-based economy, biorefining space, that's come together. And they've put £45 million for this financial year, so not an insignificant amount of money. And certainly the intent of those funders, and they're pretty confident they'll be able to do this, is to put similar amounts of money per annum for the next 3 to 5 years. So there's a considerable weight there behind funding projects within the industrial biotechnology space. And of course, what's really nice in that is it brings EPSRC and BBSRC together. So it's not just the biological sciences that benefit this, it's the physical and engineering and the chemical sciences that also support that industrial biotechnology innovation can all obtain funding via the IB Catalyst. So you don't actually have to be doing biotechnology to benefit from IB Catalyst funding. Within that, there's 5 funding streams. As I said, the networks have proof of concept funding, small amounts of funding, and the idea is that projects projects into the IB Catalyst. So it starts with translation for projects of around £2 to £5 million worth in size, so not insignificant projects, and they should be academic projects, really looking at translation. We also have an early stage feasibility for smaller 1-year projects. Industrial research, so that's when industrialists start to take over. They need to lead those programs and take innovation to that next step on the chain. Pre-experimental feasibility, that's to fund projects that really scale up to commercially relevant sizes. So large-scale projects, looking at a process and seeing will it operate, will it run at a commercially relevant scale? And then experimental development, to you and me, that's process optimization. That's taking those large-scale processes and debottlenecking and make sure they are robust. And the idea is projects can move down that pipeline and edge more towards commercialisation, because of course that's what we lack in the UK. We do the research extremely well, but we don't move enough down that pipeline of innovation. And of course, as you move down that pipeline of innovation, you need facilities, you need experts you can go to that have the kit to allow you to scale up, have the technology in place. And we're quite well served for that in the UK now. It wasn't really probably the case 5 or 6 years ago, but now we have institutes in Scotland, up in Strathclyde. We have the CPI, the National Centre for Industrial Biotechnology, in Wilton. In York, we have the Biorenewables Development Centre, and in Norwich, also the Biorefinery Centre, and of course here in Wales, the Beacon Centre. And each one of those is differentiated. It all focuses on different things. The technologies they're working on, the expertise they have are all quite complementary. So those centres should be able to really work well together and really benefit from a network that we're building in the UK. And of course, just looking at the Beacon Centre, what's really nice about that is bringing together different disciplinarities. So bringing together the ability to refine biomass at large scale here at BC, and that understanding, that knowledge, and to combine that with industrial biotechnology expertise and feedstock breeding expertise at Aberystwyth, and again combined with the Institute of Life Science at Swansea. So molecular biologists, geneticists in that department that can really develop the microbes that feed into an industrial biotechnology facility. Really complementary technologies, which makes a really nice offering both to Wales and to the wider UK and Europe. So on that, bringing in Europe, even with all those plants in existence, the bio-based economy, the technologies within the bio-based economy are so broad, we don't have all the expertise, we don't have all the infrastructure and facilities in the UK. We do have to look broader to Europe and what's available there. We don't want to be building duplicate kit, duplicate facilities across Europe. It's nonsensical and a waste of money. This is a project we're involved with, Bio-Based NWE, and this is an Interreg project which is about transnational collaboration. So this project forms a network across Northwest Europe. Northwest Europe is Ireland, the whole of the UK, most of the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, a bit of Western Germany and Northern France. So we have the Biorefining and Bioenergy Competence Centre in Ireland, ourselves for the UK, Ghent Bioeconomy Valley in Belgium, looking after Switzerland, CLIB 2021 in Germany, which is an industrial cluster organisation, RAWIN, which is a regional development organisation in the Netherlands, and Bio-Based Europe, which is a combination of a training centre in Terneuzen in the Netherlands and a pilot plant facility in Ghent in Belgium. And this network provides a way of integrating expertise and networks and raising awareness of the facilities that we have in each partner country. This is the Biobased Europe pilot plant, which is an open access independent scale-up facility, as I said, based in Ghent. And it's here, when you look at the left-hand side, you might think that looks like an old fire station. It is an old fire station. Fire stations make incredibly good process plant facilities. They have big doors. It's really handy for getting big trucks in. And that's based here at the Port of Ghent, which is Europe's largest or most concentrated bio-based energy area in Europe. It's a really nice facility. It has access to equipment we don't have here in the UK. So it's based on an industrial biotechnology platform and a green chemistry platform. So the industrial biotechnology fermenters go up to 15 metre cubed. They have several of them at that scale. And the green chemistry reactors go up to 5 metre cubed. So simple chemistry at large scale hydrolysis type reactions. And an expert group of technicians and technical staff, mostly recruited from the food and chemical industries. So they're really focused on nuts and bolts process development. It's not a research centre. It's about scaling up processes, identifying problems with processes and suggesting alternatives. And through the project, we do have a little bit of seed funding to allow SMEs within North West Europe to access that facility. So we have €10,000 innovation coupons for SMEs, and they can go with their process to the pilot plant and say, is there a different way to do this extraction? We've run this process at a 10 litre fermentation scale, but we have no ability to run this at 1,000 litres. Can you do that for us? And they'll take a quick look, maybe do some small scale trial runs or a desk-based review of the process to see what can be done. So if you do know SMEs and you're working with SMEs and you think this can be an adjunct to the projects you're working on, please encourage them to apply. There's plenty of coupons still remaining. And it's a really good opportunity to bolt on the expertise and facilities at that plant to what you're doing here. The final area I'd want to talk about is a project that's led by Aberystwyth University called BioHorizons. We've talked about the need for policy and to stimulate development in the bio-based economy, but what interventions do we make? What's the best way to do that? Is it incentives? Is it marketing opportunities? Is it about developing standards, certifications? Does it need more finance investment? Does it need more research funding? All those different opportunities, but we can't do them all. We need to make sure our interventions are the right one. So this provides an online survey for stakeholders in the area to really give their opinions in a simple format, which intervention is the most relevant to you and would do the most to drive this forward. It takes about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes if you're really thinking about it, to complete this survey. And as you're all working in the area of the bio-based economy, I'd encourage you to jot down this survey link and fill it in. We've about 300 respondees so far, so we already have a good data set, but we want that data set to be even better. And some of the results that are coming out of this are already quite interesting. I know you won't be able to read that, but if you look at the colour bars there, they represent a different category of respondees. So the blue ones are academic respondees, green are people working in the governance area, and red are people working in business. Now, the major interventions tend to fall around finance, access to finance, and the three stakeholder groups are pretty agreed what's important there, and they're also pretty agreed at what's not important. In the middle, there's a considerable lack of agreement of what academics think is important to developing the bio-based economy compared to what business think is important and what governance policymakers think is important. So if we have three different groups all thinking that different things are important, we're not in the best position to drive that forward. So I do encourage you to really fill that in so we have the best data set and we can take this back to the Commission and we can take it back to Brussels and look, you're putting these policies in place and neither the academics or the industry think it's worthwhile. You're barking up the wrong tree, guys, and we know this because we've got 400, 500 people that have said so. Okay, so just to summarise then, UK really is about translating research. We've put our money behind our expert scientists, our expert technologists. That's you. Don't let us down. I'm speaking on behalf of the UK, not the NNFCC. Access to process kit, as you all know, because you have it here in BC, is critical for SME development. So we know that's important. And we also know from a policy point of view, we need to have common drivers. So we need to make sure that academics, business and governance communities are all well aligned. And with that, I'd just like to thank you again for inviting me down to talk and for your patience and listening to me. Please, I say it one more time, 3 times and that's it. Complete the survey and maybe I'll see some of you in London next February for the Industrial Biotechnology Showcase. Thank you.